Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Weekends at Bruno, the show where we talk about a lot of things, mostly esports related. Unfortunately, today I don't have a webcam. Waga is visiting us because he's helping us cast Dreamleague, and I lent him my webcam because he forgot he's at home. So instead of actually trying to wait until he finished streaming, which he might do for 40 hours in a row, I decided to just go for it and just put a nice picture of my face instead. On the plus side, I do have a new mic right now. It's actually an Sennheiser HMB26, which is the next version from the one you're seeing in the picture. It's the one we use at TI2, TI4, ESL. It's a really cool mic, so hopefully it sounds much, much better than before. The reason I actually took so long is that when I was trying to do the second part of the series I started last time, which is about esports actors, I realized there was a lot of information to capture, and unfortunately, I couldn't finish getting everything on time. And then Dream League started, and a lot of pressure for a lot of things as well. So I decided to go for kind of like an in-between episode, and that was 2 weeks ago as well. Unfortunately, when I recorded this in-between episode, it ended up being a 40-minute long, very, very confusing episode as well because I tried to put a lot of stuff into it as well. So I decided to go back and cut it. And I'm redoing that episode, the 40-minute long one, into a much shorter one now, and I'll finish the esports actor one later. So this actually, I want to warn you, it's a little bit experimental in the sense that it's much different from just talking about Dota, and I'm going to be a little bit mathy here in some parts. But I would love your feedback, and if you want to see more of this kind of thing, more than welcome. And if this just doesn't make sense at all, and you'd rather see the other kind of content, just let me know, and I will go back to the roots. But yeah, first of all, I'm gonna skip all the lot of stuff. This was actually from my 40-minute long one, and there was a lot of jokes and stuff here. But I'm actually really gonna skip on this. And it was a lot of talks about rationality and how to maximize certain problems. I'm just you can pause and maybe take a look at these, but this was the whole initial thing that took me speaking for long and long. But I'm gonna skip most of these, and I'm just gonna go to the part that we're gonna talk about today, and just ignore the everything else. We're gonna talk about a problem called the letter problem. Now, this problem is really simple. So you have 20 people that have to write A or B, and like you can read here. Essentially, after everyone writes, someone checks all the results, and for every person that wrote A, you get $5 for each B and one for each A, and for each person that wrote B, you get three for each B and zero for each A. Now, if you look at the colors here, you will realize quickly that writing A gives you more money for each B and more money for each A. So, if the secret here is you have to maximize how much money you make, this doesn't even look like a riddle. It's very simple. I mean, A will always give you more money regardless of what everyone else chooses. You're like, Bruno, this is dumb. You choose A, right? So let's assume that 16 people write A and 4 people write B because either they just random, they didn't understand the problem, they thought there was some kind of like trap to it. And I save you the math here, and you'll see that the people that wrote A get $36, 16 times 1 and 4 times 5, and the people that wrote B get $12 each. So again, no surprises here. Like choosing A was going to give you more money than choosing B, and that's what happened. People that chose A got more money. And Bruno, like, what are you trying to get here? But now here's where it comes interesting. Imagine if everyone had chosen B. If everyone had chosen B, you get $3 for each B. It's 20 people. You would have gotten $60. And now I'll go back to the other one before. The A's got $36. So if everyone had chosen B, you would have gotten much more money than choosing A, which was the logical answer. I was like, well, how can it be? Because I mean, choosing A is always the better situation. What if like 19 persons pick B and one person picks A? Now, then what will happen there is $57 will go to the person that chose B, which is $3 less, and the A's would get $96. There is 95 for the B's and 1 for the A. So then again, it's like, oh well, Bruno, it's clearly that picking A, as we said before, makes more money. So going back into this, everyone that's choosing thinks about this, and everyone starts choosing A, and we go back into the first scenario where because of a lot of people choose A, you get less money than if everyone chosen B. So this is actually the main part of the problem. If you can agree that everyone chooses the same thing, if everyone chooses B, and you somehow can make sure that everyone chooses B, then you'll make more money choosing B than choosing A. But if you can convince and know that everyone else will choose B, why wouldn't you choose A and betray? And once you think about that yourself, you think that everyone else can do the same thing and they can also choose A and go back to the very bad situation. So, in a computational way, let's say if you program something and you have the same program running 20 times, it would be very easy to decide, okay, well, all the programs know that it's the same program running everywhere else, so it makes sense to choose B because if I choose B, everyone will choose B because it's the same program, and if I choose A, everyone will choose A because it's the same program. So between everyone choosing A and everyone choosing B, B is the better. But that works because it's programs that think like the same. With people, just doesn't work because no matter how much you can, even if you could talk to the other 19 and explain this to them, nothing stops you to write an A and just screw them all. And nothing stops the other 19 to do the same. Now when people see this, it's like, oh, this is a paradox, so there's no answer. It's like A seems better, but then B is better, but when everyone chooses B, this is not a paradox. This is by math not a paradox. This is just a catch-22. It's a situation where you pretty much lose no matter what, unless you somehow can read minds and know what's going to happen. Now imagine if this was an open vote and you had to agree all together, then it would be much easier because you could know everyone who's voting and then you can choose accordingly. But since this is a secret vote, you kind of end up trapped into having to choose A because you don't know how much the other guys are going to try to betray you or not. And no matter what the other ones choose, A, end of the day, still give you more money than choosing B, no matter what the circumstances are. So this is kind of sad, and like, why am I talking about this? This is interesting because this is a problem that is very related and analogous to a lot of problems that happen in day-to-day world. And in esports, this problem happens a lot with, for example, tournament scheduling, or like even just like tournament existence, or stuff like items in the workshop. You can organize, and let's call B cooperate, and A just being an let's just call it being an asshole, just because it's easy to call it being an asshole. No, doesn't mean that you're necessarily being an asshole. But if everyone cooperates and you distribute the tournament in a very sensible way so that there's no overlaps, and it's suddenly easier for everyone to schedule, viewers will try to watch more because there's no overlapping schedules, and it makes more sense that there's not all the tournaments together and there's like a month of nothingness, so you will have more viewers. Items, the same thing. It's like everyone will buy because people at some point they want to buy items. So if you put an item 1 month and then another month and then the other month, people will buy a lot of the three of them. But if you put the three of them together, they're kind of suddenly competing against each other, and it's a bad thing. And now this is happening at a smaller and bigger levels in a lot of parts of the scenes, and this has to do with the oversaturation of content. There is a lot of tournaments going on, there is a lot of items put in the store, and though sometimes people try to just work around this, this is kind of an inevitability. And the problem of this inevitability, and the problem and the way I present this letter problem, is that sometimes people say, well, there has to be a solution where everyone cooperates, and if everyone just like gets along with everyone, then suddenly they can all do better than what they're doing right now. And that is true, but it only takes one asshole to just suddenly pop out a tournament out of nowhere and just dictating their own rules and just ignoring this agreement that everyone has, and suddenly things get more complicated. Kind of like a small version of what happened with this was what happened with DreamHack as well. This was a tournament that kind of follows a sudden last minute. A lot of things happened, and just like a lot of matches had to be scheduled. It was not entirely the fault of them, but in the end, just trying to organize something with such short notice made a lot of problems. It also happens with players sometimes. Sometimes players, they just say yes, yes, yes to a lot of scheduling, and then they are last minute saying, oh wait, actually no, because I double booked myself, so you have to play something else. You have to just maybe reschedule, and then the tournament is screwed. So it actually goes from both sides. It's not something that there's one fault specifically, even though sometimes on Reddit we see one in particular and pitchforks go and race against them. It's something that's happening a lot, and that it could actually, well, it's not entirely serious right now. It has the potential of being much more dangerous. And the main thing about this is like the letter problem. There is no solution where everyone cooperates, because no matter how much everyone cooperates and make things better for everyone else, there can always be a guy, whoever this guy is, be a player, a tournament, whatever, that just screws over everyone else. So this is one interesting thing to talk about, and I encourage you to think about this letter problem, and just even if you want, try it with your friends. I actually tried it. It's pretty interesting. More people pick B than one would think, just because it's the right thing to do. But that's not the only problem that I wanted to talk about today. Um, there is something that I call the evil game show. This is actually also a device that I came from after thinking about a lot of things a long time ago, and it has a lot to do with what's going on in Dota right now. So to begin with, there's a show in the UK called Golden Balls. This is not the evil game show. This is actually a real show on TV. I don't think it exists anymore, but you can go on YouTube and find it. So it's two players play, and like with a lot of people, by the end they get some money. Let's say $10,000 or whatever. And by the end, when they get the $10,000 between the two of them, they have to choose steal or split. If both choose split, which is secretly from each other, of course, they split the money 50-50. If both choose steal, no one gets anything. And if one chooses steal and the other one chooses split, the one that says steal gets all the money. And this is really interesting, because if you go into YouTube, like, you will find this. There's this video of this pretty kind of like tiny woman saying, "Please, no, I really need the money. I'll split with you. I know that like you, I know that you want to steal, but please split with me." And she's very sad, and this guy that kind of looks a little bit like a douche, because he kind of looks like that. He's like, "Oh no, I promise I would never ever steal from you. I mean, people would kill me. They would just hate me in the street. I'm totally gonna split with you. Trust me. So you should pick split as well, because I am going to split with you." And this guy looks like a douche, and she's like almost about to burst into tears. And then they choose what they choose, each of them. And the guy actually chooses split, and it's the tiny girl that chooses steal and takes all of his money. So it's like a great YouTube video, and there's a lot of those. The interesting thing about this is that you control the destiny of the other person. But Golden Balls to me has a particular thing that doesn't make it so appealing, which is essentially if someone chooses steal, no matter what the other one does, the other person won't get money. So there's a situation, again, if I'm playing someone that is going to steal, there's nothing I can do. If I steal, no one gets money. If I split, I don't get money. So it feels like your destiny is entirely controlled by the other player. Still a fun game, makes for good television. But I mean, I've seen more stuff, and I have this better evil game show. So I call it the evil balls, right? So we're in the same situation. The two players earn a lot of money, let's say $100,000. And the way it works is like one of the players proposes a split. Let's say 50-50, 60-40, whatever. Now the other player can say yes or no. If he says yes, the split is done the way the first player proposed it. But if he says no, no one gets anything. So, I mean, if you think about this, if I'm playing against you and I offer 10% for you and 90% for me, you can choose yes and get 10% or no and get nothing. Essentially, saying no loses you all your money. But what you're doing is not losing money per se, it's just like renouncing to that money just because you think it's an injustice for me to take 90%. It's rather like, I'd rather lose my 10% to make sure that you don't get your 90%. But then again, it's not like the other game where you don't have control if the other player chooses to steal, because I can always be agreeable with you and try to give you something that's more reasonable to you, and you can always accept and get some money, unless I'm an asshole and I offer 100% zero, but you cannot offer 0%, you have to offer something. And if you think about this, and I like really encourage you to actually try this with someone else, think about this situation. There's $100,000, as I said before. You play with some other person, let's say you're playing with me, and it's like a game show with questions and answers, and you got to the finals and you won, and you feel that we all contributed the same. So I contributed for about 50% of the questions, and you contributed for about 50%. So we're both equally as useful in this. Now let's say you have to offer me money. And how much would you offer me? And you have to remember, you want to get as much money as possible, of course. But if you offer me too little, I might say, no, fuck that. So think about this for a second. How much would you offer to ensure that you get the most amount of money, but still is acceptable so that the other person wouldn't feel screwed? I mean, if you ask me, if you offer me a 60-40, I think I would still accept the 40. I mean, I would like 50-50, of course, but is losing $40,000 worth just being angry at not having 50,000 instead of 40,000? I think I would still keep the 40,000, right? But maybe if you tell me, I don't know, 25, 75, I'm not too sure, and I'll have to think about that. And here comes the other question, the other way around. What's the minimum you would accept? If I said, you take 25 and I take 75, would you take that? Question for you, right? It's $25,000, but I'm sure each of you will have a different answer. Maybe some of you just take 1% because $1,000, hey, it's still a lot of money. But maybe some of you will say, no, even if you offer me 49%, I think that if our contribution is 50-50, I will definitely not accept that. So that's something to think about. And it doesn't even end there, because there's something else right now. What if the split was $10 instead, right? $10, it's nothing. I mean, it's something for some people, but suddenly it just is much less meaningful. If the split was $10, would you be inclined to be more lenient and take less money? Or would you be inclined to be more strict because suddenly the money has no value and it's all about the moral value? And what if it was $100 million? Then suddenly maybe taking 1% is still taking $1 million. I mean, end of the day, we do not like to see injustice, but we might bend over because it's money. So think about each of these situations. And this is the other thing, and this is the other axis that we haven't been talking about. We talk about contributing 50-50, but what if you felt you carried the whole thing? What if you think that your value is not 50% of answering all the question, but that you rather answered 75% or 90% or 100% of the questions? Would you still accept like 75 for you and 25? Would you accept 50-50 if you think that you contributed more? Would you offer less because you think the other guy contributed less and risk the other guy get offended at that? Because maybe, I mean, you are thinking that you contributed less, or more, sorry, but he might think otherwise. Maybe he thinks that even though he didn't know any of the answers, the way you talked and discussed led you to the correct answers, and without him you wouldn't have made it. And what if it's the other way around? What if you didn't contribute to winning and this guy actually came and pretty much carried you, and you know that you pretty much didn't have anything to do? What would you offer? Would you be like, take 99% because I just deserve 1%, or would you still want some, even though you know that you don't deserve it? I know this is a lot of questions, I mean, and I'm not bringing here the answers. I mean, I can say what my answers are, but it's not the universal answers. I think personally that the lower the money is, the more I would like the split to be accurate to the contribution of each other. But the more money there is, the more I would be inclined to just forfeit some of my money, just because even taking a smaller split is still a lot of money. And again, what does this have to do with esports and Dota? As you probably know, there is a lot of percentages involved in Dota. Whenever a creator makes an item, Valve takes a split. You can accept the split, or you cannot accept the split. I mean, Valve is providing a service, certainly. I mean, they are providing the ability to put your item into a pool of items that people can buy from, and without Valve, you wouldn't be able to do it yourself. But the artist is actually the one that creates the item. Is there like an item that is so amazing that deserves more money than the other items? Same with the tournament organizer, right? The tournament organizer distributes the money for the prize pool as well, and that prize pool goes to the players. And how much is okay? And now if you include that the fact that whenever you buy a tournament ticket, Valve takes a piece of that cake as well, how much is distributed? And this is all like stuff that sometimes, I mean, not with Valve, because Valve is very set on their percentage and it's never changed. But when a guy is making a tournament and is talking to an item creator, there is a lot of, well, I want this percentage, and the tournament guy might be like, oh no, I want 2% more. And the artist guy is like, no, because I think this is what I'm worth. And not even with tournaments, even when an artist make an item for a player, the player gets a split of that, and the artist gets a split of that. But then comes the question: how much of the contribution is the item being good? How much of the contribution is having a famous name attached to it? The interesting thing is that there is data for all of these. Unfortunately, the data is kept to the people that worked into that, and it's not mine to say, but rather for the people to decide to make open or not. Um, but we are in this moment where, at least towards my understanding, everyone thinks that they're getting less than they expect, but still in a point where even though they think they're taking less than they deserve, they're accepting it because it's affordable losses, and saying no will mean that instead of getting that less than you deserve, you get zero instead. And lesser artists agree to less money. I'm sorry, when I say lesser artists, it's a horrible word to say. Lesser known artists, not lesser artists, because artists can be great even if they're not really well known. And same with smaller tournaments, they might be less um, worried about artists making more money out of them. It's an interesting thing, and I think that this is a lot to think, not only to, or less to the viewers that just consume tournaments, but also for the people of the community that are involved in these kind of dealings. To just take a step back and think, well, how much is what I'm contributing worth? How much is what the other ones are contributing worth? Is the status quo of what's being agreed upon right now something that is okay, or is just the market drove a number that really doesn't make sense? I've seen some numbers, and sometimes I question myself. Personally, I don't have an item, and I don't run any tournament specifically where I have any economical involvement in, so I don't worry about that stuff. But if I did, I think I would like to have an open conversation with a lot of people that are involved in this, because it's definitely worth talking about. So that wraps up my talk. Yeah, this was supposed to be the image where I talked about a lot of things Dota 2 involved, so you can get to see it now. If you're interested in this kind of thing, there is one more thing that I wanted to talk very shortly. This is actually a wolf dilemma. It doesn't have to do anything with wolf, it's just a mathematician called Wolf. And it's very similar to the one with the balls, so I try to bring it here just to show you a little bit. And the way it goes is like, there's, let's say 10 people, 100, doesn't matter. Let's say 10 people. In a room, they cannot see each other. They can press a button. Or not. If no one presses the button, congratulations, you all got $1,000 and you got home. But if you press the button, you get $100 straight away and you go home, but everyone who didn't press the button gets nothing. So here's my question to you. If you press the button, do you automatically win $100? Or did you just lose 900? Because if you haven't pressed it, you could have gotten 1,000, maybe if no one else did. Now, because you press it, you guaranteed yourself 100 as opposed to the possibility of not getting anything, but you lost the possibility to get $1,000. And if you were there, what would you do? Again, this is kind of similar to the letter problem, but in this, it's not the fact that someone would try to betray me, it's just like the fact that you kind of wish that everyone would do the right thing, but there is an easy way to get the bad thing out, which will give you less money as opposed to more money in the letter problem, but at least it gets you something straight away. And Wolf didn't stop there. They actually went to a more macabre version of this Wolf dilemma, which is you press a button. If no one presses it, everyone goes out of it alive. But if someone presses it, there's a 50% chance of surviving. It's like 50% chance there's going to be a shot that will be shot in your head, a bullet in your head, and you die. 50% of chance nothing happens. But everyone that didn't press will die. So now the question to you is, do you press that button and run a 50-50 chance? Or do you not press that button and hope that no one else does, so that everyone goes out of it? But remember, if one person presses the button, just one person, and you didn't, you're dead. Interesting to think about. Maybe the plot for the next Saw movie, who knows? If you are interested in this, you can check this book. This is actually pretty amazing. It's a book by Douglas Hofstadter, who also made Get the Leisure Back, which is a very known book. This book is called Metamagical Themas. It's a collection of a lot of articles this guy wrote in a scientific magazine during the 80s. Really worth checking out. Buy it. If you don't want to buy it, ask maybe a friend has it and you can read a couple episodes. Um, and yeah, that's it. So that wraps up this week's weekends at Bruno's. As I said, this was kind of a different kind of talk, a little bit of ramble about me. This wasn't scripted at all. It was just a lot of things that I wanted to put out there for people to think. So let me know what you think, your feedback. You can tweet at StatsmanBruno. That's where you can follow me. And you can subscribe to the YouTube channel to just make sure that you know when new weekends at Bruno's are going to be around, and also some good studio content as well. So anyway, thank you guys, and see you next time. Have a nice day.